lived in several haunted houses, including my present house. This is a true story about my first haunted house. When I was about 8 in 1983, my mom, stepfather, and I lived in a house in Salt Lake City, Utah. Our backyard was facing I-215. Boring description, but needed. It was a two-story house, in which my room was on the second floor. I have to describe my room. My room had built-in bunk beds that were set up in a backwards L shape. Under the foot of the top bunk and next to the head of the bottom bunk, which is where I slept, there was a play kitchen with a window looking to the bottom bunk, like the plastic ones you buy for your kids, although mine was built in. My window faced the backyard, and there was a pond back there, which we used as a kiddie pool. It was about 5 feet deep. Okay, now, if I haven't forgotten anything, on with the story. One night, I was getting ready for bed and laid my clothes out to go to school the next morning, like I always do. I had laid out a pink skirt with black polka dots and a black dress shirt. The next morning, I woke up and went to get dressed. The clothes I had laid out were no longer there. Instead, there was a pair of tan dress pants and a white flowery shirt, which even today I can't stand wearing flowers. Thinking that Mom didn't want me to wear the pink polka-dotted skirt to school, I dressed and went to school. This went on for about a week. One day after school, I had asked my mom why she bought my choice of clothes if she didn't want me to wear them. She looked at me with a confused expression on her face and said, "I don't care what you wear to school." When I told her about what was happening with my clothes, that's when she told me about the pond. She told me that whenever she was outside in the garden, she could hear kids playing in the pond. When she turned around to see if it was me and my friends, there was no one there, even though she could still hear them. That's when she realized that I wasn't even home from school yet. She knew our neighbors on both sides of us didn't have any kids. Then I told her that sometimes when I'd wake up at night, I would go sit on my toy box, which was right under my window, and look at the stars. One night, I thought I saw some kids playing out there. About 2 months later, I woke up at about 12:30 a.m., hearing noises in my play kitchen. It sounded like someone was playing with my little china dishes that were in the cupboards. Now, being scared and curious, I looked through the window and saw a little girl, about 6 or 7, with long black hair and wire-framed glasses. I don't remember much about her. My 2 cousins were spending the night, and I thought it was one of them. Only then did I realize that neither of my cousins wore glasses, and I could see through her. I was so scared. You know that breath you take when you get frightened? That small, quick, noisy breath. Well, I took that breath, and the little girl looked at me and disappeared. Only then did I scream. When my mom came running in, with my 2 cousins and stepfather, I told them about the little girl. Now, my stepfather, being the jerk he is, long story, but not for this post, said it was just my imagination and left. When I told them all the details, my cousin Kim, who was about 12 at that time, said she saw the same little girl about 3 weeks ago. We all sat on my bed as Kim told us what she saw. Kim said she was sitting in our downstairs TV room playing with the Atari when she heard someone come down the stairs Thinking it was me, she turned around to ask me if I want to play a game with her, and saw a little girl with wire-framed glasses and long black hair, who appeared to be about 6 or 7, and was carrying a doll. She said the girl went over to the sofa and sat down and started to play with her doll. Kim said that she could see the girl talking but couldn't hear anything. Kim asked her what her name was, and the girl turned her head and just stared at her. Just then, I came down the stairs. The stairs are on the left and the sofa is on the right. When she turned back to the girl, she was gone. Kim didn't say anything to me about this because she thought I would make fun of her, which would have been true if I hadn't seen the girl myself. When my mom and I told Kim about our experiences, she couldn't believe it. One last thing happened to me before we moved. I was in bed reading a book when my mom came in and told me it was time to go to bed. I put my book in my bookcase and went to sleep. When I got up the next morning, the book I was reading the night before was open on my toy box. Now, I know for a fact I had put the book away. To this day, I don't know what happened in that house. There are no wolves in Pennsylvania, but I saw one. It was massive, ghostly white, and vanished without a trace. No tracks, no sounds, just staring. Years later, it's back, watching me from the shadows. If it was never real, then what have I been seeing? When I was about 9 or 10 years old, I had a friend named Lucy who lived in a big house out in the country. She had lots of woods around her property, a barn with cows, and a pond. It was the perfect place to just spend the summer days running wild. One day, we were out in the woods, just playing, talking, and hiking. We ended up, for some reason, separating. I wasn't scared because I knew the woods well, but I did want to find her. I heard a noise behind me, and thinking it was her, turned around. Behind me stood a huge white wolf. I knew it couldn't be a dog because it was way too big, and I was sure, just from looking at pictures of wolves, that this was indeed a wolf. I was a bit scared, but since it was only about 5 feet away from me, I did not want to show it. The wolf just sat there, staring at me. I then heard another noise behind me, and hoping it was my friend, I turned around. It was my friend, and as I turned back around to face the wolf, he was gone. My friend had not seen my wolf and thought I was crazy. I knew better. I scoured the woods with my eyes as well as on foot, but nothing. When we got back to her house, I told her dad about my nature sighting. He laughed and said there were no wolves in Pennsylvania, and that I must have seen a dog. I am now 20 years old, and I still know that what I saw was no dog. It was a wolf, or something in the form of a wolf. I tend to believe the latter, because how could any animal disappear into thin air in the space of about 2 seconds? And also because it was a wolf, and there are no wolves in Pennsylvania. I guess I need to know why me and why a wolf. It was interesting, but really creepy. A few years ago, a friend of mine invited me along for an evening at Edge Hill, the historic battleground in England. The whole thing was instigated by a friend of his who we worked with. This chap had an extensive knowledge of Edge Hill and even knew the real date on which the battle's anniversary fell. Apparently, the date changed over the years due to changes to the calendar. So the evening was set. Myself and my friend, with his friend and about 4 other blokes. We drove up to Edge Hill and parked in a nearby pub car park. We then walked a short distance along a very dark lane to the start of the hill and entered the first field. We walked down the field, making a fair amount of noise, joking, and generally trying to spook each other. Anyway, very little happened as we walked through the field, and we entered the next field with feeling a little disappointed. We continued to walk towards the hedge at the end of that field when one of the group spotted some lights in the next field. We all stopped and looked at the lights. At first appearance, they seemed to be the aircraft warning lights placed on electrical pylons. There were 2 pairs of these lights at the same height from the ground. From where we stood, they appeared to be about 6 feet above the level of the field, and we assumed that they were indeed electrical pylons several miles distant. We continued to look at these lights when suddenly the pair on the right moved. This was a dark field, but as we watched the lights moving, it was possible to make out a faint silhouette against the backdrop of distant town lights. The silhouette looked like that of a man. As we watched, it became apparent that what we were seeing was a man with a torch strapped to either side of his head and who appeared to be swaying from one side to the other. One of the lads with us had a large mag light and shone it at the man, but the torch failed to illuminate the area, almost as if the light was being absorbed. Then the second pair of lights began to move in the same manner. By this time, we had all shut up and were watching the scene before us. One of us suggested that the show was nothing more than a couple of locals out playing a prank on anyone who had come to do as we had done. Spurred on by this, we decided that as there were 7 of us, and apparently only 2 of them, the sensible thing to do would be to shout abuse and see what happened. This we did, but the lights just carried on dancing and even appeared to get closer. We could see no way through the hedge into that field and decided, as these lights were now quite unnerving and our attempts at communication had failed, the next best action would be a tactical retreat. We all began walking back up the muddy, slippery field trying to get to the top of the hill for a better look. About halfway up, I turned around to look at the lights. They were now in our field on the other side of the hedge. This really scared the crap out of me, and I tried to run the rest of the distance, passing a couple of the other people and shouting at them to look behind them. We all ran up the hill and into the next field, eventually reaching the top of the hill and resting on a bench there. We sat, smoking and debating what we had just seen. One us then noticed something moving in our current field. We watched this, then saw another thing moving, then another. Then one of these things came towards us. It was a bloody horse. Pure black, no rider. The field seemed to have at least 10 of these horses, all black. But we hadn't noticed these on the way down the field, nor on the way back up. Well, that did it for us. We left the field and walked back down the lane towards the pub, car park, feeling a little safer as we saw the lights of the pub ahead. We talked about the horses and the lights and what it could all mean. One of the lads in the group said that horses had been seen before around Edge Hill in strange circumstances. Apparently, many horses were killed in the battle as well as men. As if to punctuate his dialogue, we suddenly heard this whinny from behind us. And I mean right behind us. We turned around, but there was no horse there. And on either side of the lane, the hedge was quite low, and no horse could be seen. We jogged the remaining distance to our cars and left the area, myself convinced that I had experienced something supernatural that evening.